when you're learning basketball, you need to learn the fundamentals. And one of the fundamentals is you've got to learn how to get set. And so one of the common shots in basketball is called a free throw. And so if you get fouled in basketball, you don't get a red card, you don't get a yellow card. You get to take a free throw. And normally when you're shooting hoops, you get either 2 points or 3 points. But if you get fouled, you get to stand at a line in front of the hoop, and everybody else stands away from you, and you get to shoot all by yourself. And so this is a free throw. And so what you'll find is that what you'll find, sorry, she wants to help me. Yeah, hold my mic. It's just great to have my wife around, that's all. Any excuse to get near her. Okay, so, all right, so, okay, now I would totally lose my concentration. If you're trying to shoot a free throw, what you'll see is that the players, even in the NBA, they will have different ways that they shoot it. Some will shoot from here, some will shoot from here. But if you watch, whatever they do, they try to do it consistently, and so they get set. And there's certain things that there can be a little bit of variation, but generally there are certain things that you have to do if you want to get the ball consistently to go into that hoop. And so you get yourself set. You bend your knees, and you go, and you use the power of your legs to push the ball out, okay? So you're using your legs, and you're going to push the ball out. And not only that, you want to make sure your foot is behind the line. There's actually normally a nail, and you align yourself with the basket, and you're shooting. The hoop is there. You're positioning your arm. You have this hand to guide the ball where you want to put it. This arm is for power. And so sometimes people will shoot, and they'll have their elbow out here, and they'll shoot it, and with the force, the ball goes that way instead of straight. So you have to have your elbow in. You guys are going to be wanting to play basketball. I know, this week, you're going to be out there. So you get your elbow in, and you're set. Say set. Because when I'm thinking about mindset, this is what I'm thinking about, okay? The fundamentals, because I want to succeed. How many want to succeed in their life? So how do you do that? That's the question. Well, what I'm proposing is that you got to get your mind set, okay? So you get your set. Should I do this? I'm going to do this. All right, you ready? I'll try not to break anything. You ready? Okay. That's good. Mindset. That was just an excuse to play basketball. I'm all out of breath now and everything. I love basketball. And it's such a beautiful picture of life because we all want to succeed, but sometimes we're just all over the place. And what we need is a mindset. And if you have the right mindset, you will become more consistent, and God wants you to succeed. Okay, so I'm gonna unpack this and help us understand this a little bit better. But will you raise your hand one more time? Who wants to succeed in life? We all want to get points on the board. We want to have success. And so we're talking about mindset. So let's look at what this definition, kind of the way we're packaging this idea. Pursuing truth that lights up our view of the world. Pursuing truth that lights up our view of the world. You got to set your mindset. And how you view yourself will change how you view the world. Okay? And so mindset is absolutely important. About 11 years ago, I visited Alaska. I think many of you have heard this story before. I've shared it before. But I was visiting Alaska, and my brother-in-law brought my new bride and I out to a lake to go swimming. And we were having a great time at this lake swimming. And then I thought it would be a great idea to try to touch the bottom. So I went down and tried to touch the bottom, and I couldn't feel it. So I came back up. Then I was like, I got to do this now. And so I went down, way down, further than probably I'd ever been. I touched the bottom, and as I touched the bottom, all of a sudden I felt this like explosion in my head. And so I floated back to the top, and what had happened is that I had burst my eardrum. And when I came out of the water, the whole world went wonky. I literally, like everything, it felt like everything went sideways. And I was in a bunch of pain. I couldn't even figure out which way to go because I was so sideways that I had to lay on my back, do the backstroke just to get to the shore in order to survive this situation. And I think this is a great picture about how sometimes we find that our mind just goes wonky. Sometimes this can happen to us through like a trauma. Sometimes it can happen through rejection. It can happen through a hurtful situation that we went through. It can happen through things that really make us angry. And so our whole mind has shifted. I won't ask for a raise of hands of anybody that's ever experienced your whole mind shift going wonky. But this is something that's very common. If I ask people to raise hands, probably everybody could say that has happened. So it could happen through fears. It could happen through believing lies. It could happen through an inability to change. It can happen in all sorts of ways. So here's a question, probably a good question about mindsets, and that is, have you adopted mindsets that are unhealthy? Are you living with a way of doing things and thinking about things that is making you less than actually you're meant to be? And then here's the second question to go with it. Are they stopping you from something? Okay, let's look at some options of what these might be. What are some mindsets you'd like to change? Maybe it's I'm afraid of, or I worry about. I'm overly angry. I can't do this or that. I'm too weak to. I'm not gifted enough to do that. Nobody really likes me. Or maybe it's just I wish I could stop. If we don't open the blinds on these ways of thinking, then we can never actually heal from them. By the way, I don't see the world wonky anymore. My eardrum healed up. There's a nerve that goes from the ear to the brain, and that was damaged briefly for that moment. Thankfully, it's all better. And my proposal to you is that God wants you to be better, and He wants to heal those places that are kind of off kilter, maybe at the moment. And so let's open up ourselves today to those things and open up to God that maybe He would want to bring His truth and His life into those areas of our lives that have gone wonky. And, mindsets and challenges with our minds is helpful whether you're a Christian or you're not a Christian. All of us have times and seasons where we go and our mindsets are wrong. And so we're all in the same boat. So smile at me for a second. We're all in the same boat. So I got two questions that I want to work through with this. The first one is, why should we want to have a new mindset? The second one is, how do we gain new mindsets? Why and how? I want to talk about probably one of the most drastic moments in the scripture where there was a mind shift that took place, and that's the story of a guy named Saul. And Saul was, you read about him in the book of Acts in the New Testament. He was called a persecutor of the church. There was this brand new movement of people that followed Jesus, and this guy, Saul, thought he was sent by God to either kill them or do everything in his power to stop them from doing what they thought was right. And so he chased after them. He was there when the first person was killed for their faith, a man named Stephen. He was stoned to death, and Paul was the one who was overseeing this killing. So he was a scary guy, literally a terrorist of the early Christians. And so the story goes that he was traveling to another city in order to get some more Christians in trouble. And on his way, he met Jesus. He encountered Jesus, and everything changed. This guy was a man of action. He was a man of strong decision-making. Unfortunately, his action and his decisions were all wrong. And he was confronted with Jesus, and he was changed. And it was such a profound change that happened to him. Before he was killing the Christians, now he's become one of them. And then over time, he becomes a leader of Christians. It's an amazing story. Beautiful what happened. And I love what he writes in the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 1. This is one of my favorite verses. He writes to the Roman church. He says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." I want you to see the mindset. In order for him to have a new mindset, he had to have a new way of seeing. And so in view of God's mercy, there was a transformation that happened. He had this encounter with God where he began to understand who God is, and then it changed how he lived his entire life. Do you see this? Nod at me if you see this. So this is his transformation. And I read a quote in my journal this week, somebody who is just a famous businesswoman, but I think she says something profound and very biblical. She says, "We live by what we believe." We live by what we believe. And this is what the Apostle Paul is telling us, that in view of God's mercy, this will change how you live. So look at, he goes on, he says, "Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Say, my mind. My mind. Okay, so the world, you got some options about where you get your mindsets from. Did you know that? You probably didn't think about that much. But you got some options about where you go for your mindset. So where do you go for your mindset? And how's that working for you? Let me propose to you that if you go to the world for your mindset, it's not going to work out so great, usually. Maybe read the news headlines, for example, and call me up and tell me whether you're happy or anxious. Probably if you're reading all the headlines, you're going to get anxious. Spend, 8 hours a day on YouTube watching whatever your feed will show you. And then tell me whether your mindset is at peace and joy, or is it anxious and worried? If we go to the world, I think very often we'll find ourselves stressed, anxious, busy, lonely, comparing. These are all patterns of the world. When we get our mindsets from something other than what God has for us. Okay, so again, can I repeat myself one more time? Where do you get your mindset from? And I would propose to you that you should go to God for your mindset. You know that's where I'm going, right? The Apostle Paul actually wrote this to another church. He said, "Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things." Couldn't be any more clear. Set your mind on things above. In view of God's mercy, this is how you can live this life that He's called you to. So why do we do this? Why do we want to have new mindsets? Because God has better things for us. Because God knows you. He made you. He loves you. He's not against you. He wants you to succeed. He wants you to get points on the board. So go to Him for your mindsets so that you can be set to move forward with what He has for you. I was talking with, I had a meal with some pastors this week, and they were talking about our old friend Gary Davidson. Some of you know Gary Davidson. Probably 40 years ago, he started a church up in Dublin called St. Mark's. But they said this, and I thought it was very profound. Gary used to always say, glance at your problems, gaze at your Lord. I thought that was very profound. From now on, you can just say, Noel said, glance at your problems, gaze at your Lord. I'm only joking. Okay, so let's look at a couple of stories because Jesus is interested in our mindsets. And I want to show you just a couple of examples from the New Testament of people who took next steps with Jesus, how he challenged them to examine their way of thinking for the purpose that they would enter into all that he had for them. Okay, so the first one is the story of the rich young ruler, or the really rich young man. And he came to Jesus as a very wealthy guy, and he stands before Jesus and he says to him, Lord, what must I do to enter into the kingdom of heaven? In fact, I think he even kneels before him. What must I do to enter the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus says to him, well, you must do this, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, some of the commandments. And the young man says, well, I've done all of these since I was a kid. And Jesus is like, that's great. Now all you need to do is sell everything you own, give to the poor, come follow me. Then you will have treasure in heaven. And the guy went away sad. Have you heard that story before? Is Jesus against money? No. The problem was the guy's mindset about money. Money had become the number one for him. All else had to bow to his love for his situation. And Jesus was trying to tell him that there's actually more treasure for you than you know about. This is a mindset, okay? Do you see that it's higher? So Jesus was inviting him to a higher treasure, a truer treasure, a longer lasting treasure. But unfortunately, we all like money, don't we? Yes, you do. Don't act like you don't. I'm trying to bring some conviction. But Jesus has a greater perspective. And so sometimes he challenges us, and sometimes we're like, okay, I don't know. I'm done. I don't think I could do that one. Jesus. His desire wasn't to see that guy go away. Actually, he was sad to see him leave in that moment. I don't think it was the end of his story either, myself. But Jesus was calling him to something greater, a different way of thinking. And let me propose to you that you think more earthly than you may think you do. Okay? And Jesus may have a higher place for you and I to enter into. All right, let's look at another story. Jesus is having a conversation again with his disciples, and he's telling them how he's going to go to Jerusalem. He's going to be treated badly in Jerusalem, and then they're going to bring him to be crucified. He's going to die, and then he's going to raise from the dead. And Peter's like, Jesus, just stop. Would you just stop? That's enough. Like, things are going so good. Would you not be so negative? Right? Would you just be an optimist, Jesus? Listen, let me tell you, don't ever rebuke Jesus. It's not a good plan. It never goes well. It didn't go well for Peter. Jesus says to him, Peter, come on. All you have in mind, you do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. Peter, you're thinking so low. I want you to think higher. Think higher. It's a different kind of a mindset. The third one was Jesus' friends, again, these disciples, these followers of Jesus. Any followers of Jesus here? So these followers of Jesus, they were fighting with one another about who was going to be first. So one of them was like, no, I'm going to be the CEO. The other one's like, no, I'm going to be the CEO. You're the vice president. And they're just fighting, like your kids. You're like, just stop it. And Jesus is like, guys. And he goes and he brings them this child. And he says, if you want to be great in God's kingdom, be like one of these. Do you see this is a different mindset? Do you see how Jesus will challenge your mindsets? So how's your mind doing? How are your mindsets? Is there any that are gone off wonky? And Jesus wants to be like, hey. And what I find so great is that he didn't like rebuke them for wanting to be great. He wasn't like, stop trying to be great. No, he was like, if you want to be great, then this is the pathway. Look, it's a pathway towards humility. It's a pathway where it's going to be better for your own soul. It's going to be better for your relationships. And it's the way that God wants it to be. Do you see how it's a different type of mindset? It's a beautiful thing. And Jesus, he calls us to these things. And there's a number of different changes that he brings into our lives and challenges us with. And it's a higher way of doing things. And you don't have to take 50 steps this week. But maybe you want to just take one. Maybe God's saying, hey, there's just one I want you to take this week of a new mindset that I have for you. So those are the why. The why you want to have a new mindset is because God has better things prepared for you. He has a new way of thinking for us, and he wants us to move into that. Now let's talk about how. How do we do this? And this is the fourth encounter. And so there's this woman who is caught in adultery. And these religious people catch her and they drag her out in front of Jesus, who's been teaching crowds of people. And they put him on the spot in front of people that he's teaching. And they say, Jesus, the law says that we're supposed to stone this woman who we caught committing adultery. What do you say, Jesus? You see, they put him under pressure. They're trying to catch him out. And so Jesus crouches down in front of these religious people that have dragged this woman in front of him. He crouches down, and it says that he writes in the sand something. It doesn't tell us exactly what he writes, but he writes in the sand. And then he says these words to them. Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. And then he stands there. I think he just waits. And I think Jesus doesn't mind a little awkward silence. And so then the oldest of the group walk away. And then the middle-aged guys who drag this woman to shame her, the middle-aged walk away. And then pretty soon all of the ones that dragged her in front of the crowd and Jesus have left. And imagine this woman, like totally, maybe she didn't think she was so bad, but now everything is out in the open. Can you imagine the shame and just feeling like the worst? It's horrible. And Jesus stands there and he looks at her and he says to this woman, is there nobody here to condemn you? And Jesus is the only one without sin that he could condemn her. Boys, he says to her, is there nobody here to condemn you? And she says, no, nobody's here. And he says, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. And you see what happened there? That this woman probably had a whole new way of looking at herself that she didn't have before. And remember what I said? When our mindset changes about how we view ourselves, it transforms how we view our world. And so when we encounter how God sees us through Jesus, our minds are transformed. They're really changed. I love this quote by a pastor from New York City named Tim Keller. He says, we are more sinful and flawed in ourselves than we ever dared believe. Yet at the very same time, we are more loved and accepted in Jesus Christ than we ever dared hope. So spot on. And when you can have that view and that understanding that you are very messed up, yet at the same time you are eternally perfectly loved changes everything. That's why Christians are supposed to smile. So Jesus, through his life, death, and resurrection, models to us what it looks like to have this different kind of mindset that changes how we think about ourselves and about our world, and it also changes how we live our lives, because our mindsets are profound and important. And so you remember he was washing his disciples' feet, and he gave them this instruction: I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. You see, it changes you when you see who you are and how God sees you. It changes how you view everything. It's a brand new mindset. So let me go back to the beginning, that question I asked you. You know, you have options about where you get your mindsets. You can get them from influencers, you can get them for advertising, you can get them from politicians, but I want to propose to you that the best place to get your mindsets are from Jesus. And they are profound, they are higher, they are worth more, and they are longer lasting. And it's just better to stick with him. Okay, so here's kind of the conclusion about adopting mindsets that I want to share with you. Adopting new mindsets. This is the pattern that I just tried to express to you through this talk. First of all, why is because you got to recognize that God has a better way, that he wants you to get points on the board. He wants you to succeed. And then the how is that you see yourself as God really sees you. That's a new mindset. Third part is identify negative influences. Like, you know, what are those things that you're thinking about? This is probably a good way to do it too. Those things that make you go wonky. Identify the negative influences. Then lean into God for the new mindsets. Lord, what are your ways? In this situation, I really, every time I think about that person, I just want to get them back. Lord, do you want me to get them back? Lord, is that the mindset that I should have? That I want to just knock the legs out from under them? Or do you have a different way for me, Lord? You know, these kind of mindsets. Lean into God for new mindsets. Adopt a posture of openness to God, that maybe he has a higher way. Be captivated by the life of Jesus. Like, read the Gospels, look at his life, and you will be amazed at the way he lived. And you will be challenged to the way that we've been called to live. And the third one is an excellent mindset to have, and that is that you can get others to help you. You know, it's good to get help from others. Maybe there's a friend that you need to talk to help you with your mindset. Maybe, you know, in your life group that you're a part of, maybe you need to bring up something because you want to see what do they do, how do they figure this out. Maybe there's a book. You saw somebody overcome something and they read this book. Ask them for the book title, because maybe that'll help you in changing your mindset. Maybe it's a counselor that you need to talk to, a pastor you need to talk to. Ask others for help. Is that okay? All right. So I just want to take about a minute. We don't often do this at Life Church, but we're going to do it a little bit more. I want to take a minute just for us to just chill and sit with what I've shared here. And I would just like you to talk to the Lord and maybe think about yourself. What are the negative mindsets that are causing maybe you to go wonky? And then ask the Lord, would you help me to get right? Would you bring your mindset into my life, this higher way of thinking? Okay, we're just going to take a minute, and then I'll close us in prayer.